Hello, hello. Welcome or welcome back to everybody. My name is Ben. I hope I caught you doing well. Now, in this video, I'm going to be going over some of the next steps on painting this Stug IV tank, or really any late war German tank. Yeah, so in this video we're going to be going over painting the tracks, which you can see here. We're going to be going over adding the tools and painting the camouflage, painting and chipping the camouflage actually. So yeah, these are a few stages that really bring your model to life, and I really love this part of painting a tank because you really start to see the end result, and you can see everything taking shape, and it's really rewarding. So yeah, this is what it should look like at the end, and if you want to see how I got to this, then make sure to watch all the way to the end, I guess. And yeah, if you haven't seen part 1, then part 1 will be linked in the description, and that was just really the laying all the base coat and all of that, and the chipping, of course. So yeah, enjoy the video. Alright, so all I've done off camera since the last time was I just came in here and I painted up the rubber on all these road wheels. It's just black, it's simple, and I polished up the exposed edges of like all these high contact edges where the tracks would go on the wheels, and I just polished that up with my own metallic pigment, which is just fancy words for saying a grinded up pencil. It's really easy, you just put some on your finger and rub it over. Yeah, so the first step that we're going to do in this video, which I think is quite a nice step, it adds a bit of detail, is we're going to be adding all of the tools to the tank. So we're just going to be gluing them on. You need to be careful with the glue because sometimes the glue can wear off the paint. So don't like rub too much, just put some on the tools and press it down. I've already pre-painted all the tools. It's because honestly, it's a simple process. You just come in where all the wood parts are, where all the metal parts are, and you paint it. And for the metal parts, I didn't use metallic paints like silver. I just made a dark gray mixture and went over that with the metallic pigments, which I had shown you guys earlier. Now, a viewer did mention to me the other day that what could be a nice alternative for metallic paints that could also give you some more variety for colors is using metallic nail polish, which I must admit is a pretty good idea, although I didn't go out and get any yet because I already painted all these tools like weeks ago. Alright, so as you can see here, I've added all the tools, and it's really nice. It adds a little layer of detail, which is nice. Now, one thing that I do want to mention is I'm going for a field applied camo look. So this is camouflage that did not come out of the factory. It was more that the crew like applied it by themselves. I'm gonna be doing it a bit unrealistically, it is going to be field applied, but I do want it to look kind of nice, so it will be more opaque than some people would argue that it should be. Boom. And so if you want to go for the field applied look, I would recommend that you do the tools before you apply the camouflage, because you know those little guys are gonna go over the tools. They're gonna spray over the camo. They don't care about the tools. They just want to make their tank look invisible. But if you're going for a factory camo look, then I would recommend applying the camo before you put on the tools, because then they would not have had the tools on already. With that in mind, I did leave one tool out, or well, rather a weapon. I left the MG42 out or I think this is MG42, I hope so. Well, I left the machine gun out that would usually go in this little hole. And honestly, again, that's a little unrealistic because they wouldn't care about that either. But it's just, I think it looks a lot cooler when this isn't covered in green and brown paint. So yeah, okay. And what I've done here already is I've applied a thin coat of this hairspray here, just a very cheap hairspray from the Carrefour. If you live in Belgium, you'll know what that is. Yeah, and so then what that allows is that when we apply the camo afterwards, we can go over it with some water and chip off the camo paint, which is nice. It gives a little worn look to it, and it makes it a bit less of an intense effect. So applying the camouflage, it's honestly quite a simple process. Just make sure and test it out on a paper towel or a test piece beforehand. And yeah, so the paint mixture was olive green, yellow olive, and black, and about 50% thinner, just to get the right consistency. But you can play around with it also with the PSI. I was at about 10 PSI, but you could go even lower than that, really. If you want a more in-depth tutorial on how to do this field applied camo look, I would actually recommend a video by Panzermeister36. That video will be linked in the description, and that's where he paints a Stug IV with field applied camo, and it gave me inspiration, and it's a really good video. Okay, as you can see, I've applied the camouflage. You can see it's not a very good job. The main thing I'll attribute this to is because I am horrible with an airbrush. Still learning. But to be fair, in my defense, the little 1/35th scale guys wouldn't do a great overall job either. You know, it's small squiggly lines. Okay, that's my defense. I've done the camouflage. I think it's okay. I've done on the side armor as well on all the plates. You can't really see it, it's not in the shot, but I've done all the plates. I'm sure you can trust me. And then now what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in here, and much like what we did in the last video, part 1, which will be linked in the description, we're gonna do chipping again. It's just chipping away at the camouflage paint, not with the intention of getting the metal, the like primer color chips, but with the intention of chipping away the camouflage color. So yeah, if you want a more in-depth explanation of that, again, go check out part 1 of painting this tank. Like I said, it'll be in the description below. So yeah, on to the time lapse. So for specifically chipping the camo paint, I don't really have many tips. Honestly, it's very similar to what we did in the first part. The only difference though that I would recommend you guys stick to as well is to be a lot more gentle with it, because the coat of paint that we put on for the camo is much thinner than the actual base coat that we put on. So only use the soft brush. Don't use the shish kebab stick or the stiff brush. It's really, I mean, it's not necessary. If you want to, you could, I guess, but you really don't need to. But you know, of course, everything still applies. Just know where the crew would walk and all that stuff. Okay, so as y'all can see, I have chipped away a lot of the camouflage paint. Like I mentioned before, you know, this really lessens the effect a lot, and it makes it more subtle, which I really like, and it really beats up the whole tank. So yeah, now that that's done, I also went ahead and added all the decals here. Well, 2 decals, it's not really that much. That was a simple process, you know, put it in some hot water for about 10 to 15 seconds, and then scrape it off and put it on here. This is simple. And I added the MG from earlier that I mentioned. And yeah, now comes a very fun part, which I really enjoy, although I don't have a ton of experience with it, and that's painting the tank tracks. So I have the actual tracks here, and I have all of the spare tracks here. Now, the thing is, we're going to be beating up the spare tracks a lot more than the actual tracks. Well, no, not a lot more, but just enough that there's the actual variation between them. The main reason for this is that usually the spare tracks were taken off of old decommissioned or destroyed vehicles, and so they had already been in use for quite a while. So yeah, like most of my models, the first thing we're going to start out with is by applying a primer. So I'm just applying this black primer, and yeah, I'll just do that. Okay, so at this point I already applied the primer. It's such an easy process. I figured it wasn't really worth showing. But here I am applying the base coat for the actual color, which is kind of like a rusty, muddy type color. And it's really just burnt umber, red, yellow, and black. And of course some, about like 30% thinner. And you don't need to get actually a perfect coat over the whole thing, you know, because the rust isn't going to be consistent everywhere. But just make sure you do get it enough that you actually see the color. So yeah. And on a lot of these pieces, actually, because the black was so overpowering, I just came over here and did a second pass just to get the color to really show. Okay, so as you saw, I applied the primer and the base color for the sort of rust-ish, dirty look. Now, the next part, which I personally like a lot, it adds some dust effects, and it adds some texture to the rust as well. I have two different colored pigments here. These are my own pigments. I basically grinded up two different colors of sand, and they're very fine. It's pretty much like a fine powder now. And I also have my own little wash. It's an acrylic wash, and in there I have mainly burnt umber, let me see, yellow olive, yellow ochre, and wait, sorry, where is it? Yeah, and some red. And it was a little light, so to darken it down, I just added some black. And of course, I mixed that with a lot of water and some dish soap just to make it, just to reduce the surface tension so that it flows quite nicely. Yeah, it flows quite nicely. Okay, so what we're gonna do is get like a fluffy brush, kind of like almost like a makeup looking brush. I don't know makeup, so don't use whatever you will, but just a fluffy brush. And then we just dip it in our little bag or container of pigments. And oh wait, there's not so much on there. And you just kind of tap it on a little bit. You don't really rub it much. Otherwise it kind of brushes it off, really. And we don't want that. You don't need to be too consistent with this, so you can add more pigment in certain areas. It's as you please, really. And yeah, then go over with a brush and put it in this this acrylic wash here, and it's as simple as going over it with the wash here, and you can kind of tap it in, brush it a little if you want, but you don't have to, and you just kind of put it in until it's full. And you can repeat this process as many times as you want. Really, it just depends on how much texture you want. And eventually, in the end, once we apply the once we put the tracks onto the tank, then we'll weather them further with more dust effects and whatnot. So this is just like purely painting the actual tracks, not really weathering that much. So yeah, I'll get that done. Okay, so I've gone ahead and added on these tracks about 3 layers of the whole wash and pigment setup, I guess. And now the final step that we're gonna do is let me just draw my brush out here. I've got a mixture of the regular wash that I made plus some yellow, so it's a bit thicker and a bit lighter. So then what I'm gonna do, just to add some tonal variation, I guess, wait, hold on, oops. I'm just gonna dip my brush in this lighter mix here and kind of splatter it on, I guess. And that just creates some slight splatters of the lighter color. And you can just do this on all of the tracks, and it's an easy way just to get some nice unique colors, I guess. So yeah, I will get to that, I guess. Okay, now that the tracks are dry, or all the paint is dry, sorry. Now we can move on to the final step of painting these tracks. That is, I just put some of this metallic pigment that I was talking about earlier on my finger, and simply I just go over it like so, and it creates a nice metallic effect on all of the exposed edges, and it removes also all the pigments from the exposed edges, because, well, there wouldn't be any pigments or dirt or rust on the exposed edges because they're constantly grinding against roads and stuff like that. So yeah, this is quite a nice nice little effect that I quite like. So yeah, I'll show you guys once I've finished with that. Okay, so all of the tracks are dry, and I've just gone ahead and put them on the tank itself, which isn't too difficult really. You can see it's really nice now. You can see our tank is starting to take shape, and we can really see start to see a sort of end result. And you know, if you were still a beginner, and well, I mean, I'm still a beginner, but let me frame it this way: if you don't want to get into the world of oil paints, then you could also just call it quits here. Honestly, I would, even now, I would be happy with this, like as a finished model. I think it looks great, but it can be even better, and that's through other weathering parts or processes that will go in the next video. And just to show what kind of stuff we'll be going through next video, we're gonna be adding an oil pin wash to everything, which makes all of the small details pop. It really brings the model to life. we're gonna be adding some mud effects and some dust effects, mainly on the lower hull, around the tracks and wheels and all that, and on the tracks, but also some effects on the top here. So yeah, if you guys want to watch that, then stay tuned, I guess. And yeah, this is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, support is always appreciated. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good day.